Hey, in this video, I'm going to walk you through the first component of reading, which is comprehension. Now, comprehension covers so many different areas. I am going to walk you through the ones that are most important for you to know to be able to help your students strengthen their comprehension skills no matter what you teach. So imagine that when you're teaching reading, because no matter what you teach, reading has to be a part of it. So reading is the bridge that connects the written word to your understanding, and comprehension is the foundation of that bridge. So comprehension is not just about recognizing words, but it's about constructing meaning and also engaging with the text, whether it's making inferences, drawing connections, grasping the underlying message, or understanding the theme. There's just so much to comprehension as the foundation of that bridge that helps our students connect the written word to understanding. And so we are going to explore how reading comprehension is the ability to understand, interpret, and derive meaning from what has been read, how comprehension is fundamental in every subject and grade level, whether you're interpreting historical texts to understanding scientific experiments or technical content. Whether it's elementary school or secondary school, teachers use strategies like open-ended questions to guide their students to deeper understanding and greater interpretation of the text. And comprehension skills are not limited to language arts. Obviously, they are crucial across all content areas. And so that's why we are diving into the 6 components of reading and starting with comprehension. So the first point that I want to explore is that understanding comprehension is interactive. It's an interactive process. Reading itself is an active process because readers are constructing meaning by interacting with the text. It's not passive at all. It's going to involve thinking and questioning and connecting. So it's important to consider that every reader brings their own experiences and knowledge and skills, their own set of characteristics, their own levels, proficiency levels, their own motivations, and their own purposes to the reading process. And these things influence how they interact with the text and the elements of the text, and all of that bridges how they connect and how they comprehend what they've just read. And so having this, having background knowledge greatly influences understanding and interpretation of the text. So when when it's an interactive process, it's important to tap into the background knowledge of students so that you can understand or be aware of their experiences and knowledge and interests and motivations and those things, because that's going to aid in them in their comprehension. So think about a student who might be very passionate about history, and so they might engage more deeply with historical text, historical information, and they also will make richer connections that will strengthen their comprehension of reading those historical texts because of their background knowledge. And if you're able to tap into that background knowledge to help them to comprehend the text. So understanding that comprehension is an interactive process, reading is an active process, will help with the students being able to make those connections with the text so that they can have better and stronger comprehension. The next one is knowing that there are different types of comprehension. Like, for example, there's literal comprehension, where that is just understanding the explicit information in the text. There is inferential comprehension, where students are making inferences based on the information in the text as well as their own background knowledge, right? There is evaluative comprehension, where students are critically analyzing the text to understand deeper meanings and themes and author's purpose, and they're, forming judgments about the content. And so it's important to be aware of the different types, of the different types of comprehension, the different ways students should engage with the text. Students can comprehend the text. And when you are aware, when students are aware, it's going to just equip them with the tools that they need to understand, to analyze, and to engage, not just with the text, but with the world around them through the world around them through words, right? So how they read and comprehend, let's say, a sign is quite different from how they would read and comprehend a current event article, right? So that's why it's important to know the different types of comprehension. So literal, inferential, and evaluative are 3 types. It's also important to be aware of strategies that can enhance students' comprehension, and that could be a strategy like predicting, encouraging students to make predictions about the text based on what the title says, what the headings are. If, let's say, you're reading an article or the textbook and it has headings and subheadings, they can even make predictions based on prior knowledge, right? And so that the strategy of making predictions is going to help students to enhance their comprehension because they're making connections with the reading before they even get started. And so the next way the next strategy that can enhance comprehension is questioning. You want to teach students to not only ask questions while they're reading, but they can ask questions before, looking at the title, looking at the structure, looking at the images, if there are images, looking at vocabulary words. Ask questions before, ask questions during the reading, ask questions, of course, after the reading to clarify their understanding and delve deeper into the meaning so they have stronger comprehension. So questioning is another strategy that can enhance comprehension. The next strategy that can enhance comprehension is summarizing. So summarizing will help the students in identifying main ideas and supporting details from the text, and that will help them to pick out, the ideas that are most important. So summarizing is a strategy that can enhance comprehension, as well as visualizing, where visualizing is about the students creating mental images based on what they've read. And think about, for your visual learners, this can enhance their understanding as well as their engagement with the text. So strategies that enhance comprehension are predicting, questioning techniques, summarization, and visualizing. So those are just 4 examples, just 4. There are more. Those are just 4 of the common ones. Those are strategies that enhance comprehension. There's also the role of vocabulary in comprehension, right? Because understanding vocabulary is very, very important to understand what's read. So when you teach vocabulary explicitly, for example, that's going to be important for the students to understand what they're reading. So doing vocabulary activities, which we'll get into when we talk about the reading component vocabulary, but those will aid in comprehension. So that's how vocabulary and comprehension connects. Next, it's important to make students aware of the text structure and the organization of the text. So students, when they're able to recognize and understand text structure. So when I say text structures, what I mean is like a narrative text or a persuasive text or an expository text. That's what I mean when I say text structure. When they understand how the text is structured, that aids in them predicting and comprehending the text. So a current event article is structured differently from their, let's say, like a storybook. Okay, so you want to teach them how different texts are organized and the common features that are found in different types of texts. So these could be various elements, like the genre can differentiate the structure. It can also differentiate how the readability of the text, the complexity of the text. All of those things play a crucial role in how you'll tailor your teaching strategies to help students enhance their comprehension skills. Because if the text has a lot of complexity, like let's say the text has complexity and lots of vocabulary, like really technical vocabulary students aren't going to be familiar with, well, you're going to have to implement some teaching strategies to help them with vocabulary, right? And so just think about, the structure and the organization of the text and how those things unfold, and so that you can better help your students and set them up for success. So I want to share just like a few examples, like as it relates to the organization and the structure. So I mentioned, thinking about narrative and expository and persuasive, like narrative structures. Those are typically like chronological order, right? So in a narrative, there's a clear beginning, middle, and end. There's characters, there's settings, there's a problem, conflict, there's a resolution, things like that, right? And so when you have a narrative structure like a short story, that students are going to expect there to be that clear beginning, middle, and end when they read. And so they're looking for those things. And that's going to help them better comprehend. If you were looking at, let's say, an expository structure, think of expository like writing, right? So those things present facts and they have explanations and they have instructions and, in some kind of logical order. They don't tell a story, but they do explain or they inform. And so when the students are reading like a chapter in their science textbook that's about the water cycle, they're going to understand that that structure is more logical. It might describe the steps for the water cycle. And then it might even have diagrams and definitions, because that's the textbook versus the narrative structure that may tell a story about a young boy or girl, whatever. Okay. Another example is the persuasive structure. So persuasive writing, persuasive text obviously aims to convince the reader of their point of view. It presents an argument. It supports it with evidence. And those are the kinds of things that the students would look for in a persuasive piece, right? So like an op-ed piece or a persuasive essay, they're going to look for like that thesis statement that has the opinion. They're going to look for the facts and the statistics and the evidence, and there may even be a call to action. And so their understanding of that text structure is much different than the narrative structure and even the expository structure, right? So when students are aware and are exposed to various text structures and can recognize the organization of the text structures, that is going to help them tremendously with their comprehension. So the next one that we're going to talk about is comprehension monitoring. What that means is you want to teach students to be aware of their understanding as they read, right? You want them to be able to recognize when they don't understand something, and you want them to be able to tap into strategies that can help them clarify and even correct their misinterpretations. So clarify their comprehension, and correct or rectify their misunderstandings. So things that you can do or teach them to do is like a think aloud. So while they're reading the text, they're thinking out loud like what their experience is. So you can model this for them. So they read the text and they may say something like, well, this paragraph is confusing. I'm going to reread it and look up words that I don't understand. Right. And so when you model that for them, they know that example of a think aloud is something that they can do when they don't understand when they read it the first time, and they can see that it's okay to reread things to get a better understanding, right? So when they're able to verbalize their understanding and their confusion, that in a think aloud process, which is a strategy, which is it's an activity that you could do with your students. Okay, that's an activity that you can do. Another activity that you can do with your students are comprehension checks, and so this is basically asking questions about the text. Think of the formative assessments, right? Asking questions about the text to assess students' understanding while they're reading. Stop, you read a couple pages or you read a couple paragraphs and you stop, you ask them questions to see how well they've understood what they read. And so you doing that is also going to teach them to ask themselves questions. So if they read like a couple pages on their own, they can say, well, do I actually understand what I just read, or do I need to go back and review some parts of it? Can I summarize what I've just read? What are some of the key details that were in what I just read? So being able to empower the students to ask those kinds of questions, those comprehension checks, is a great strategy. Another one is graphic organizers. Love graphic organizers because these are things that support all types of learners in many different ways, right? So when you think of a graphic organizer, think of Venn diagrams. It's just one type. Concept maps, story maps, and these are going to help students track their vocabulary maps. These are going to help students track their understanding and visualize and organize information. So as students read, they can fill out these graphic organizers, and this can be a tool for them to monitor their comprehension. Graphic organizers are great, a way to differentiate instruction. It's also a great way to provide remediation for students. It's even a great way to provide, let's say, the higher learners, gifted learners, ways to dive deeper. Okay, so they're great. They're great. I love graphic organizers. Now, another type of activity that your students can engage in to monitor their comprehension is annotation and note-taking, right? So you want to teach students how to annotate and take notes. They can use note-taking structures like the Cornell notes, which we've done in our session before, like giving them that structure and showing them how to do it, teaching them how to annotate by highlighting not the whole page, but key ideas, and they can jot down questions in the margin or know anything that's confusing for them to help them monitor and improve their understanding. So the annotation and note-taking is another comprehension monitoring strategy that you can teach them how to do in class, right? You could teach them how to do this in small groups, in large groups, and have them do it, and even submit it to you to do a check and give them feedback about it so that they can get better at it. Okay, I'm just going to share a few more comprehension monitoring activities really quick. Summarization is another one of them. You can ask students to summarize the main points in their own words to help them, consolidate their understanding. Another comprehension monitoring strategy is metacognitive, using metacognitive strategies. So like the prediction and the visualizing and connecting to prior knowledge, all of those things require students to think about their thinking. That's what metacognition is, thinking about thinking. And they're encouraging that active engagement that we've talked about earlier. And like that's self-monitoring as well. And of course, this requires lots of modeling because this is one of the most difficult things for students to be able to do. And so it does require like them to see you do it, how this works, how metacognition works. It takes a lot of practice as well. Okay. Another comprehension monitoring strategy is reflective journals. So students can keep reflective journals, reading journals, where they're writing about their reading, their understanding of the reading, the experience with reading, any difficulties, vocabulary words, things like that. And so reflective journals are another comprehension monitoring strategy. Discussion is another comprehension monitoring strategy where you may pair students up to read together. They can discuss the text, ask questions, clarify ideas, support each other during these kinds of discussions as they're, paired reading and discussions as they're doing it together. Kind of like, let's say like a jigsaw, right? And the final one I want to share is feedback and guidance, right? Regular feedback is always going to be important for you to guide the students on their comprehension and the ways to improve it. So feedback is absolutely important so that students know where they are and can seek a guidance from you so that they can improve. All right, so those are some comprehension monitoring strategies, and these are activities that you can actually do with your students to enhance comprehension. They can even enhance some of the other reading strategies too, some of the other components of reading as well, right? And so I'm calling out activities because for your assignment, you have to come up with activities to do with your students for each of the components of reading. So I just shared with you a whole bunch, right? And you can tailor it for the different components and the different ways and strategies that you choose to deliver the standard. Okay. So the next consideration for comprehension is differentiation, and this is actually part of your lesson plan, which is assignment 4. Differentiation is one of the areas that you're going to have to address. So comprehension instruction should be tailored to meet the diverse needs of learners. All your instruction should be tailored to meet the diverse needs of your learners. And this could be students with special educational needs, students who are culturally and linguistically diverse, and even gifted students, right? And so some of the ways that you can differentiate for your diverse learners: you can provide scaffolded supports. This could look like graphic organizers, like visual aids for your students. So graphic organizers and charts and graphs, helping them to simplify concepts visually, right? And that makes it more accessible for all students. You could do guided reading with them, where you provide structured reading exercises, like you break up the reading and in chunks for them, and you provide them guided questions to answer for the chunks, or you do it together so that they can, better understand and comprehend the text that they need it broken up like that. And it's going to help. That kind of strategy helps students with different levels or proficiencies. They engage with the text meaningfully. They don't look at the text and see like a million words. If it's chunked, it's more manageable for them. Okay. You can also vary the complexity of the text so that students are reading text or materials that are appropriate for their grade level, right? So you don't want to, you want to differentiate with the complexity, with the level, the reading level. So you're not giving a student who's at a certain level something that's too high for them to even grasp, okay? So those are all scaffolded supports. We're going to talk more about scaffolding in, I believe it's the next class. So those are supports to help students to get from one level to the next by kind of think of it as a ladder, like helping them move up the steps. Okay. The other type of differentiated instructional support that you can offer your students is interactive learning, multimodal or multi-sensory learning. And what that looks like is being able to incorporate audio and visual resources that supplement, I want to say supplement, or that enriches the text. I think that's the word I'm looking for. So using like audiobooks. So yeah, you have the book, the actual physical book, but maybe there's some parts of it that have a lot of dialogue that you use the audiobook for. Using videos, using interactive media, and that can help students just interact and engage with the content in different ways. So it's a multimodal approach. So like in our syllabus, if you notice, there are videos, there's articles, that you can read. There are graphic organizers, like the note-taking ones. And so those are examples of multimodal resources that support the topic, right? So you're interacting with the topic in different ways. You can also, another way to use interactive or multimodal learning activities is through hands-on activities, where students like physically interact with the concept with their hands, like, which is really great for kinesthetic learners. Like it could be a reader's theater where they're using their hands like puppets, like a puppet theater. They're actually creating something with maybe they're creating a collage of a character, or like an open mind diagram of what the character's internal conflict is, or something like that, where it's hands-on. And then there's also collaborative learning that could be done in so many different ways. Think of our jigsaw that we've done. Think of turn and talks, where you're pairing students up to read and discuss and allowing them to support and learn from each other. So interactive and multimodal learning activities is a great way to differentiate instruction for your diverse learners. And the last way, the third way, is encouraging choice and agency in your students. So giving students a choice in the reading selection, allowing them to choose a book or choose a text that interests them, that can increase their motivation and their engagement. Also encouraging them to reflect on the reading process and self-assess their comprehension. That's a great way to encourage that, that agency, that autonomy for them. So differentiated instruction, lots of ways you can do it. Some of the 3 ways that I talked about are using scaffolded supports, interactive and multimedia learning activities, and encouraging choice and agency in your students. So I'm calling out differentiation here because that's part of your that's part of your lesson plan. Okay. Now we're going to talk about comprehension and writing because reading comprehension feeds right into your writing skills. In fact, for your assignment where you're going to explore the 6 components of reading, one of the requirements is to come up with an instructional activity that relates to writing, right? So reading comprehension feeding into writing is an example of that. Fluency in writing and the other reading components also feed into writing. So more specifically, understanding how texts are constructed aids students in becoming better writers. right? We talked a lot about structure earlier, where we explored like a narrative, an expository, a persuasive. So we talked a lot about structure, but that can help students in becoming better writers, because if they see models of different text structures, they get exposure to the way text is supposed to be, to way the text is supposed to be structured. So they know how to structure a persuasive piece of writing. They'll be exposed to new or interesting words and phrases that they can utilize in their own writing. And so that's, just some of the ways that reading comprehension feeds into their writing skills. Okay, this is not the last but least, but um, it is important that we still continue to have conversations about assessment, because using a variety of assessments, especially formative assessments, right, helps you to gauge where your students' comprehension levels are at. So yes, you have to use formative as well as summative, but formative assessments should be regular. They can be informal assessments, and this is going to help you monitor your students' progress, and it's going to also help you inform your instruction. It's also important to provide feedback, constructive feedback, to guide students' improvement. This could be in writing, in conferencing. This could be feedback with peers, like you guys did when you worked on your philosophy. And so the feedback could come in different ways, but it just has to be very specific for them to know exactly, be clear, so they know exactly what they need to improve and what they were successful with. Okay. All right. So we just touched on assessment and feedback. So I want to explore some examples of reading comprehension assessments that can be suitable for elementary and secondary students. This is going to be helpful for you for your upcoming assignments, which would be your lesson plan, as well as your reading components assignment, because you have to do activities, student activities that support the strategies that you are going to include. So let's just talk really quickly and briefly about some ways that you can assess reading for elementary students. So you can do story elements where students are, where you're assessing the understanding of students, um, where you're assessing the understanding of students' understanding of characters and setting and plot, for example, right? So they read a story, you want them to fill out a chart or graphic organizer, you want them to draw a picture, or you want them to write a journal entry or something like that, where you're assessing story elements. Another type of assessment for elementary students in comprehension is it's called sequencing, and that's where you're asking students to retell a story in the correct sequence. So what happened in the beginning, middle, and end, right? That could be done verbally, that could be done with drawings, that could be even done with like sentence strips, where you have the students like arrange sentence strips, okay? There's reading response journals where students can write or draw about what they've read. They can express their connections, their thoughts, their questions. And again, this is a way to deepen the connection and deepen the comprehension with the text. There's something called cloze reading activities, like the word cloze, CLOZE. And this is where you would, in a passage, remove keywords and ask students to fill them in. And here you're assessing their ability to understand vocabulary. So it's the comprehension, but it's also the vocabulary piece, because it's the context of what it is they're reading. So they have to understand the reading, but the vocabulary plays a key role in that. And so they may read a paragraph and you remove, you cover up a word, and they have to fill in that missing word, and that will help you to determine if they've understood what they've read. Of course, there's comprehension questions that you can come up with to help determine where the students are in their understanding of the text. Okay, and those are some of the things for elementary. For secondary students, they could do essays, analysis essays. They can do group discussions and debates. They can do things like project-based assessments, where they're creating presentations and videos and posters that demonstrate their understanding of a text. They can summarize and paraphrase texts. They can do reading logs and annotated bibliographies, and of course you have your quizzes and your tests. These can be your summative. You can do readers theater. That can be done really in all grade levels. You could do graphic organizers like concept maps. And so those are just some of the examples of ways that you can assess your students' comprehension. Okay, and again, these assessment examples are going to be useful for you for assignment 2, assignment 3, and assignment 4. All right, now I want to jump into another instructional strategy that you may often turn to, and this particular strategy is explicit instruction. Now, it does play a crucial role in teaching comprehension when it is done correctly. Explicit instruction is not to be confused with a teacher standing in front of the class just lecturing away. So some key aspects of explicit instruction that you definitely should be aware of is explicit instruction involves breaking down complex comprehension skills into smaller, manageable parts. So you have to be a bit systematic in your teaching approach, because you might explicitly teach how to identify the main idea of a paragraph, or how to recognize cause and effect relationships, or how to infer meaning from context clues. You're going to explicitly teach those. You might give them definitions, right? But it goes deeper than you just giving them the information. Now you as the teacher have to model. You have to serve as their guide, and through modeling, you're demonstrating how readers can think and process the text that they're reading, so that they can figure out what the main idea is, so they can recognize cause and effect, and so they can derive meaning from the context clues. And so this modeling for you might look like, reading aloud and verbalizing your thought process, like the think alouds I talked about earlier. This might look like you showing students how to approach a text and ask questions, like with the annotations that we discussed earlier. And so you have to be that model and that guide for the students. So not only do you provide them the content and the structure, right? The structure, like when I say the structure, I mean, what is it that you're teaching them? What is the concept you're teaching them? So yes, you are defining that for them, but you're also modeling it for them. So don't just tell them, okay, we are going to identify rhetorical appeals, and here is what ethos, pathos, and logos is. Now go figure it out. You actually have to model for them how to identify these things, right? So modeling is a key part of explicit instruction. And after you model, you have to engage the students to make sure that they understood what not only they heard you say, but what they saw you do. And so this is guided practice. This is what that's called. You have to engage students in guided practice. And so this is where there is a research-based strategy called the gradual release model. And it's I do, we do, you do. And so the guided practice is where you support students as they apply the new skills. And this is where you provide feedback to them. So as they're annotating, you're providing them feedback. You're scaffolding, which again, we're going to talk more about scaffolding in the next class, but you're helping them to build on their learning so that they can increase their proficiency as well as their confidence. And then once you have given them the guided practice, now they're ready to do it on their own. So this is where now they've taken what they've heard you say, they've seen you do, they've done with your help, and now they will do it independently. And so kind of doing things in that way reinforces skills for them. And it also helps in, of course, developing their comprehension, but it helps you in assessing their comprehension right there as well. And so, yeah, it promotes deeper learning and retention ultimately. And so let's see, after they do it themselves, don't forget that there's still that assessment process and there's that feedback process where it's not complete without that. You have to give them that ongoing feedback and assessment so that they are well aware and can correct. And you can even adjust your teaching if you notice that there's some gaps in what they're doing. Okay, so the explicit instruction, again, is not just standing in front of the students and telling them what something is. There are different parts of instruction that makes the explicit instruction. So it's the content that you clarify for them. It's the modeling that you provide for them. It's the guided practice that you engage them in with your help. And then it's the independent practice that they do confidently. And then it's the feedback that you provide to them throughout each of those steps, right? So that is what explicit instruction is. And the reason we talk about it here with comprehension because it's a strategy that is often used, right? And it is a strategy that, when done well, aids in the comprehension for students. All right. And so as we move from the explicit instruction, one of the things that I taught about there was that gradual release model. I do, we do, you do. So I just want to give you a little bit of more information and even an example of what that can look like for you. So when explicit instruction has the elements of the gradual release embedded in it, I do, we do, that's that guided practice. Now you do, that's that independent practice. That's when it's going to be successful. So the I do part is the teacher modeling, right? So the teacher can demonstrate the skill. So it might involve the teacher reading the text aloud and verbalizing their thought process. For the guided practice, this is where we do it together. It's the collaborative piece. So this is where, as a group, we're going to engage with the text together through activities like discussions, asking and answering questions, making connections, right? And the independent practice where the students are doing it, where it's the you do part, that's where the students get to apply what they've learned independently, right? They complete activities independently. It could be a graphic organizer, it could be a quiz, it could be a writing task. And when all of those things work together and are done together, it builds the confidence and the competence of the students, their proficiency, right? So since we've talked a little bit about graphic organizers, I wanted to just give you more information because, again, graphic organizers are so important. And it does play a crucial role in enhancing comprehension, especially for students who are culturally and linguistically diverse, and students who have unique or special learning needs, and even students who are gifted, right? And so graphic organizers are visual tools. They help to break down complex information into manageable parts. They provide clarity, they provide organization, they provide a great way to process information and understand text. So graphic organizers give a visual representation of knowledge, right? Transforming or translating the text into visual formats. So like think of a Venn diagram where it's a compare and contrast. So you're taking the words from the text and putting them in the diagram with images, in the Venn diagram with images. So students who are visual learners or who needs the text to be presented in that way can see it more clearly in a graphic organizer, right? Okay. Then you have cultural and linguistic students, diverse students, where graphic organizers for them can reduce their reliance on advanced language skills, like higher proficiency in the reading language. And so those graphic organizers can help them again with the visuals and taking more words and simplifying it. That just supports them a little bit more. Graphic organizers are great for differentiation because they can be tailored to meet the needs of all different kinds of learners, whether it's incorporating graphic organizers that help students develop higher order thinking skills, or it could be graphic organizers that simplify concepts for your students. And it helps with organizational skills. And it improves comprehension and retention because it breaks down the information into smaller parts. It connects information for students, connects concepts. It facilitates deeper comprehension. And it does foster critical thinking skills as well because students can, synthesize information when they are using graphic organizers. And some examples of graphic organizers, I know a popular one is like a Venn diagram. You have story maps that help students understand the elements of a story. So think about like your plot pyramid, that's a graphic organizer. It could be a concept map that allows students to really like explore like the relationships between different concepts. This could be used more in like a science class, for example, or even a history class, because concept maps could show like cause and effect relationships, right, of events. And so concept maps are great for that. Think of a KWL chart. That is a graphic organizer as well, helping students to activate their prior knowledge and set learning goals and summarize what they've learned. And flow charts are also graphic organizers, which can help students, process information, order of events, like a timeline, for example. Okay, so those are all examples of graphic organizers, and these are a great way to differentiate, a great way to support students in their comprehension and their learning journey. These are activities that they could participate in. This can even be a formative assessment. So lots of ways to use the graphic organizers. Okay. Now, as I conclude, I know we talked a lot about different ways that reading comprehension surfaces in your classroom, right? And we talked about strategies. We talked about, instructional strategies. We also talked about student activities or ways students can engage with the reading comprehension. So as I come to a close, I just want to remind you that comprehension it's more than just understanding the words. It's about connecting, and it's about engaging and discovering, students being able to discover the world through text. So as you guide your students through this reading journey, remember that you're not just teaching them to read, you're really opening doors to new worlds and possibilities for them by enhancing strengthening their comprehension skills. Your role, no matter what grade level you teach or what subject area you teach, is pivotal in shaping how your students interact with and understand and even appreciate the text and information and the literature and the narratives and the stories, all of those things that they're going to encounter. For you guys, especially because you're transitioning from different professions and diverse fields, you're bringing such a unique perspective that really can enrich your teaching because your experiences can create relatable, real world connections for your students, which makes the comprehension more meaningful and engaging for them when you can bring in your experiences and help them to make connections, right? So I just want to remind you of that, as we come to a close in talking about comprehension. So I don't want you to stop the video yet because I do want to share my screen with you so we could talk briefly about what you're doing in the course. So that course outline. So I'm going to share that real quick with you. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so let me do this. Okay, so here you can see, okay, here we go. All right, so this is three, you're watching this video here on 320, right? What you're going to actually start with is an assessments and the 6 components of reading. So this is like a continuation from our last class. So we're concluding the section about assessments with you exploring the 6 components of reading and assessments that are tailored to each component, because I want you to understand the ways that these different assessments are tailored for the different components of reading. So this is here, when you click on screening and assessment, this is going to take you to 4 types of assessments that are important for reading. So you know summative assessments already, but there's also these types of formative, like you could do universal screeners, diagnostics, and progress monitoring. So it just tells you what those things are. And then down here at the bottom, some screening tools that, the district, the school may use for students, right? So it wants you to just review that. And then this is where you're going to look at the various assessments for the different components of reading. This first link here just takes you to like the main page where everything is, right? So on this page, you can see all of these things. If you click on each of these, they're all hyperlinked. So if I click on comprehension, it's going to take me to the comprehension section. It gives me a little bit about the type of assessment that can be used for comprehension. And as you click each one, you will see it does the same thing. Oral reading accuracy, here's the test, here's what it measures, here's some information about it, here's some additional details for you to consider, blah, blah, blah. And as you click on each one, you will see those examples. What I want you to do is review each of them as it relates to assessments, and then think about any insights that you've gained, what questions you might still have about assessments, and think about how you can either enhance your assignment 2 with anything that you've learned about assessments from the 6 components there. Jot down your ideas because it's going to be important for your upcoming assignments. It's going to help you. Okay. All right. So moving on to comprehension. So you should be watching the video right now, right? That's the lesson overview. And then there's a video here about why explicit instruction is important. And so I talked a little bit about explicit instruction in my video, but there's going to be more information here. And then here's an article about the gradual release model. I do, we do, you do, and why that's important with complex text when teaching your students complex texts. Then I want you to review 7 strategies to teach students text comprehension. So this is going to give you 7 strategies that you can use with your students. So again, comprehension monitoring, metacognition, graphic organizers, answering questions. So some of the things, are giving more context with what I mentioned in this video earlier. There's also further reading that you can partake in. This one is teaching expository text structure to facilitate reading comprehension. So you can explore that, as well as reading comprehension and empathy, which is a research article I find quite intriguing because it talks about the connection between reading and empathy. And then here's some additional resources. So this one here, the first one says 5 reading comprehension assessment strategies. So more strategies for assessment, more strategies that you can refer to for like assignment number 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so you have assessment strategies here, like making connections, think, pair, share, summarization, drawing, making predictions, again, building upon some of the things we've already discussed. And what the next article here, the graphic organizers, these are fantastic because it actually gives you graphic organizers. So these are all the different types of graphic organizers, and you can, take a look at them and see how you can utilize them in teaching the different, not just comprehension, but the different types of reading components. Okay, so you have your graphic organizers, and this one here, this is kind of a really rich resource, disciplinary literacy. This has a lot of stuff. So you do have, the article here where it talks about disciplinary literacy, right? But then it also goes deeper into sections. So when you click on each of these, it takes you to a whole nother article. And then down here, it's a lot of stuff. So just kind of bookmark this as a resource. You can review it, but it's really a rich resource to have. Now, as you start planning for your reading assignment, which is number 3, and your lesson plan assignment, number 4, if you don't remember what those are, I strongly encourage you to go back and review the requirements and the rubric for these. So go back and review assignment 4 and assignment 3, because everything that we've talked about and done applies to it, right? So what I would like for you to do is you are going to think about the ideas that you have about topics you want to teach, right? What strategies, what activities, and what assessments can you come up with that relates to the standards, the literacy standards? I want you to make a list. Oh, you should have already, we already did this. So in the prior class, you do have your top 12 list of go-to literacy standards. And so I want you to think about what ideas you have for, topics that you want to teach, strategies you want to use, activities you want students to engage with, and assessments that are related to those top 12 literacy standards that you came up with previously. And jot these down because these are going to be super helpful for not just assignment 3, but also assignment 4. Okay, so that is it for the 6 components of reading, starting with comprehension for class on March 20th. I will see you all on April 3rd because we have spring break on the 27th next week, so we will not meet on that day. You will have a video like this one for that day, as well as content to review for that day. Don't forget to submit your assignment 2 by 3/24 and complete your reading rockets. And yeah, just make sure that you review all the information for 3/20 and you're on target. And my TED Talk will actually be the 21st, which will be tomorrow. So if you're going to be there, I'm looking forward to seeing you. Other from that,